So now it is my pleasure to start a conversation. So this evening, I'm going to hand it over to Henry to give you a brief statement about the film. Our panelists will have a chance to share a little bit more about themselves, and then we will shift into question mode. So take it away, Henry.
Cool. Thanks, Neak, and thanks everybody for coming and watching the film. Yeah, I'm Henry. I made this film. I'm based in Brooklyn now. Grew up in Berkeley, California, and I really am an outsider to Southern Utah. You know, coming from California, it's not a place where I'm from, and I kind of stumbled across this story really kind of by accident. I had traveled near the monument in high school, and then and really fell in love with the landscape, which I think is a very common occurrence. And in 2018, I actually found out about the reduction of the monument's boundaries. And having this memory of having traveled there in high school, I kind of just immediately became very obsessed about the reduction and feeling like I needed to just go see this landscape that was changing and this monument that I had read about and kind of seemed so fantastical and was mixing with these kind of nostalgic memories I had. And so being a filmmaker, I had this notion of maybe there's a film I could make here. Maybe there's a story. Maybe there's a place for me. And so my initial instinct was really with my kind of preconceived biases and perspectives. I imagined I might make this kind of very kind of full-throated partisan sort of call to arms conservation pro-monument film, or pro kind of original boundaries. And so I took a trip out to the monument, kind of following this instinct, just to try to meet people and learn as much as what I could. And I met Marsha on that trip. And even actually before taking that trip, I had discovered Marsha is and she can introduce herself better than I can in a moment, but she runs the Southern Utah Oral History Project. And I discovered that early when I started doing this research. And it was just this massive trove of these transcribed interviews that she's done over many, many years. And for a documentary filmmaker, that is just an absolute treasure trove. So I dove into these. I poured myself. I tried to just kind of immerse myself, in what the place was, and learn as much as I could. And I came out and I met a lot of people and Marsha and a lot of people. And basically, I was looking for a story that I really didn't find. I didn't find this kind of what I sort of expected to be this story of kind of, the good conservationists against these kind of evil extractive resource industry corporations. That was kind of my very naive take on it, just with my personal assumptions. And as I started just learning more and more about the landscape and the monument and Southern Utah, the story just became more and more complex, and much more nuanced and much more fascinating at the same time, and much also harder to describe to people. But it just quickly, I realized that it was much more interesting and compelling if I didn't try to convince somebody that my perspective was right, but just to kind of try to present the complexities and nuances that I was discovering, so that people watching could kind of make their own educated, informed, or at least more informed kind of in perspectives of our shared public lands. So that's kind of my, my initial relationship with the story, and how it kind of evolved to what it became.
Great, thanks, Henry. So I'll give our remaining panelists, if you want to add just a little bit to who you are. Maybe Marsha, since you were behind the scenes for our film, would you like to tell us a little bit more about who you are in a brief snippet here?
Yes, thanks, Neak and Henry. Marsha Holland, I live in Tropic, Utah, and I've lived here since 1999, and just stumbled into the Southern Utah Oral History Project, meeting Marietta Eaton in San Francisco when she was just starting the monument, working on the planning. And so it was Grace, that kind of put me in this position to meet all these wonderful people who reside around the monument. And since 2000 or so, we've been taking interviews from longtime residents on the monument, which is how I met Lonnie and eventually Harlan, and then had the great pleasure of interviewing Megan for the first time. And so that's been quite a journey and wonderful.
Thank you, Marsha. Actually, what I think I'll do is I'm going to kick off with the first question. And if Harlan, Megan, and Lonnie, you want to add any sort of introduction at the beginning of your response, I think that would be a great way to start. So Harlan, can you kick us off and tell us a little bit about what the experience of watching the film was like for you, and if seeing your interview in the context of the other two voices make you think and feel new things about this region?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name's Harlan Featherhat. I'm half Paiute, half Navajo. I lived in southern Utah all my life and in the Four Corners area. I was raised by my grandparents on my Navajo side, my dad's side. And when I was 12, 13 years old, I moved back with my Paiute side, my mom's side. And that's where I learned my better half, I guess, what you'd say, learn more about the Paiute side. And I got started in this 82, 83, and I've been doing it for 20 years since. And then when I moved to Cedar City, I kind of didn't want to do it no more because it was for me to travel a long ways back and forth where my wife's from, Richville. And I met Marsha and she wanted to interview me how we got the grand staircase to get it going, and telling her there was like 15, 20 tribes there. First meeting I went to for the Paiute cultural, was representing the Sharon band from Richville, and I've done it for 20, 25 years. When I was 23, 24 years old, and I've worked with the BLM, rehabbing lands, and one day it got dropped on my lap. How'd you like to go to a meeting to create a national monument in southern Utah? And I said, sure. So I went to a lot of meetings in Capitol Reef and with a bunch of help from different tribes, and before this was dropped on my lap, I did a lot of survey with my friend Craig Norman from Richville. At the time he was working for BLM. We did a lot of land survey and how the land was getting damaged and how coal company wanted to build roads into where all the logicals were, you know, the drawings on the rocks and how they wanted to build a road down through there so they wouldn't have to drive so long. And we went up there and did a survey, and I told them, I said, there's no freaking way you can build a road down through here. These rocks are unstable, some of them, and we need to, you know, preserve this. And I took on the challenge to work for the tribe, and we did a lot of surveys on all different lands, clear down to Kanab and cross country, how all the land was being destroyed by ATVs. Back then it was with three-wheelers. They were making their own roads in where they're not supposed to be. And basically it wasn't just them that were doing it. The ranchers were doing it. They were overgrazing a lot of stuff out there, and there was no, I don't know how cows could survive out there. And so we took on the project of rehabbing all the lands, putting the vegetation that were there before, and we did a lot of rehab from Sevier County on down to Kane County. And I believe in rehabbing land, railing. You know, there's a lot of good out of it. You know, you can restore it back to its natural preserve. And I took that challenge on. Then my next project was the Grand Staircase, and so I went and I told them how I felt, how it needs to be preserved for our grandkids, you know, our future grandkids. I got 4 great grandkids now. I got 12 grandkids, and I got 4 great grandkids, and told them that we need to preserve this for everybody, not just us. People from overseas, they like coming out here looking at our national parks, and you know, you just start to bond with it, you know. And so that's where I took it on, and we voted to establish the Grand Staircase National Park, and they showed us two phases, original, and then if it didn't get passed, they showed us another map, downsized it, but we all went with the bigger version. And then dumbass Trump downsized it. I don't know why. The seismograph people came through. They already proved there was no fuel, no oil. And I don't know why you'd want to drill something when there ain't nothing out there. It was already a proven fact. And I've been retired for 3 years now. And what I do now for part-time job, I do wildland fire now, and do that for part-time. And I took my wife last weekend to the first fire we went to down on the Kaibab National Forest. And while I was walking around out there, and vegetation's coming back after the fire destroyed it. I've seen new plants coming out of the old plants. And fire does wonder for lands. It brings vegetation that wasn't there before, it brings it back. And so I guess I'm proud of, you know, what I did, you know, to get all the environmentalists to get involved, you know, not to build new roads through our forests and stuff. And they've been our great allies, you know, fighting, you know, governments, you know, to do stuff like this. But in a way, I still also believe in the government for rehabbing national forests. And I've been on several big fires that Trump kept saying, you know, you guys need a management. How are you going to manage it? You don't get fundings from the federal government. They give you so less that you can't manage it. You can't manage it. So I don't know, I'm not a left wing or a right wing. I'm just a guy way out there that I believe in all this stuff, you know, to bring stuff back to our land. And I was telling Marsha one time, I think Mother Earth's going to bite us in the ass one of these days. And it did. You know, they brought the coronavirus. It takes the sun to kill this virus. And in China, where it started, they don't have sun. It's all polluted. So it just kept growing. And it's just like Prince William said, you know, Mother Nature is mad at us. You know, this is the guy from England that believes in Mother Nature. And, you know, we can only do so much, then she'll get pissed, you know, turn this around against us. But I appreciate everything that Henry did to, you know, have this eye opener so everybody could see, you know. And it's just, you know, we need to do it for our grandkids and our great grandkids and all the people on this earth, so they can see what Mother Nature can provide, how beautiful it is, all our national monuments and national parks. So
Thanks, Harlan. Thank you. Lonnie, would you like to share a little bit about your experience of watching the film and any other introductions that you want to make about yourself? You are muted. There you go.
Am I there now? Okay.
Yep.
Yes, well, I'm Lonnie Pollock. I've lived in southern Utah, tropic, all my life, 70 years almost. I'd like to compliment Henry and his crew on their work they've done. Very professional, high class, top rated individuals. I just enjoyed being with them for a couple of days. Marsha and I have been friends for a long time. I have a great respect for Harlan and the Native American people. I've worked with them a lot, and I love their perspective on how they look at the land. My family has a special attachment to Megan. We love her and we appreciate her very much. I'm also a public lands rancher. I run cattle on the monument. My attachment to the monument and watching this film has gave me even a greater appreciation for the monument where I live. My attachment goes far beyond my ranching heritage. It goes to my heart because it is an emotional spiritual part of my life and always has been. I've spent countless hours and days on the monument with people that I respect and with my family members, with my sons, my son-in-laws, and not just cowboying and running cattle, but hiking and hunting and just sitting on a high point and enjoying the scenery. I love the monument. When it was established when President Clinton established it, I had mixed feelings about it. I thought that it would be maybe go through changes where we couldn't enjoy it like we once did. That hasn't been the case, which is unusual for politicians and bureaucrats, I might add, but I've appreciated how the monument been managed. I'm kind of a in between an environmentalist and a conservationist, I guess. I can see places where we could improve things on the monument. There's places that shouldn't be touched, and there's places where we could make some conservation improvements. You know, I love this land. I've lived here for all of my life, and I want to preserve it and future generations will be able to come and see it. I've noticed this past year it's taken a pretty good hit because it's had a lot of visitation on it, maybe a little bit unregulated. and that kind of bothers me a little bit. It's a large piece of ground and it's hard to manage. That's for certain. And I think that's up to individuals like myself and those on the panel and you and others to share the monument and to share the values we have for it and try to protect it. But yet I'm still an advocate for multiple use. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Megan.
Yeah, watching so I'm Megan, I'm from Kanab, and I've lived in Southern Utah my whole life. And I also really appreciate, I guess I just want to start out saying that I really appreciate Henry for making this film, for bringing it together in the way that he did. I really loved hearing, you know, Harlan's story and his connections, and I also feel a great love for Lonnie and his family. So it's great to be a part of a film with people that I really respect and can relate to so well. So I guess I just really echo a lot of what Harlan and Lonnie have already said. It is really important that, I mean, both Harlan and Lonnie have talked about the significance of it in terms of connection to their families and having it be around for future generations. And I feel that too. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And like Lonnie said, it's a place of spiritual significance and a place of peace. And, you know, it just does so much for our mental well-being to be out on these public lands. And it's a place for us to bridge our story with the past and with our future. And so to me, it's just so incredibly important that we keep them available.
Thanks, Megan. And thank you to all of you, both for what you said in the film and just now. I think it really highlights the meaningfulness that this place has for each of you and for so many of us. So I'd like to kind of shift to thinking about what role history and storytelling play in conversations about public land. So I'd like to start with maybe Marsha as the oral historian and then Henry as a visual storyteller, and then we'll open it up more broadly. But can you share sort of your thoughts on the importance of elevating history and using storytelling as we think about, discuss, make decisions about public lands? Marsha?
Well, the important thing from at least my oral history project is to develop and preserve the connection that people have, you know, from the past, present, and hopefully for the future to the land. Everyone has said it in this group already. It's the connection to the land that, you know, has brought us here, keeps us here, that we want to pass on to future generations. Harlan mentioned that, Lonnie speaks about it, and Megan is hopeful with 2 young children. And the oral histories provide a bridge and a way for next generations to still connect to the land. You know, I live here, all of us live here. You know, Lonnie's my neighbor, my closest neighbor. And I feel like Harlan and Megan indeed are my neighbors as well. And so we have common ground. And as an interviewer, it just delights me to listen to folks like Megan, Lonnie, and Harlan discuss how they feel about the land. And it gives a lot of you know, truth to why I'm here. You know, there's the spirituality part that Harlan is trying to pass on to his family, that Lonnie feels, Megan feels. You know, it's a place for us to work things out. And I think that these opinions and sense of place need to be discussed. They need to be out there so that we're not looking at the polarization in public lands. We're looking at the common ground that we have in public lands. And so what I'd like to see is people like Harlan, who's getting slaughtered by his puppy, Megan and Lonnie, that those voices are heard more broadly in this discussion, because these are unique voices on the land. And so that's what I think about it. It's a beautiful place. I have the same love that all these people do. I do find peace here and a sense of place. And I really appreciate all the interviewees, Harlan, Megan, and Lonnie. You know, there are a lot of tears when we were doing these interviews, lots of hours. And to Henry and his crew, incredible editing. That's all I can say. Beautiful work, and keep up the good work, Henry.
Thank you, Marsha. I mean, I just have to say, this film would not exist without all of the folks on this panel, but especially Marsha, who, I mean, it's not at all apparent in the final cut, but Marsha was, I asked her to actually conduct all of the actual interviews, because, I mean, she's, you know, years and years more experienced as an interviewer than I am, and so she was just an absolutely integral part of the process. So thank you to her as well, and everybody. But yeah, just Neak, to respond to your question on stories, just briefly. I mean, I think they're essential in how we understand each other and places. And if we want to understand each other, which I think we do, stories are just one of the best tools that we have to do that. I mean, you know, when I just try to think back to kind of my mindset as I first learned about the monument, and how far it went when I actually just was able to go and visit the monument and have these conversations and hear these stories from the people who lived there. I mean, it's just my understanding increased in depth so much, and that it's just through the stories we share. So it's essential.
Great, thank you, Henry. Let's move. Actually, Lonnie, Megan, Harlan, do you have anything to add? Thoughts about storytelling history? Okay, great. So the next question is for all the panelists, perhaps maybe a little bit more for Lonnie and Harlan, but we have an audience question about what kind of natural changes you've seen on the land in your time living there, and what sort of things, just sort of what sort of changes to the land you've seen. Lonnie, would you like to kick us off? There we go.
Well, when I was first on the land, of course, it wasn't a monument. And so you could spend days down there and never see anyone. A lot of the roads that exist now weren't there. There's, you know, a benefit to that, because a lot of people that couldn't enjoy the monument can now. Although I'm not a fan of ATVs very much, and they've kind of done a little damage. That's probably my biggest complaint. There's a place for them on the monument, on the roads. I don't mind that at all, you know, but when they make their own roads, that bothers me. I think that's one of the biggest changes. just the number of people after they made the monument, visitation increased, and we just had a lot more people there. And I guess, to be honest, I guess I'm a little bit selfish, because before, I could saddle my horse and I could ride for days and never see a pop can or or a tire track, or so it's changed a lot that way. As far as I remember when they came in and done the exploration for coal and oil, and they found very little. But some of those things have, some of those scars remain, but most of them have healed up. Mother Nature takes care of that in time, for the most part. I see some, as far as the story you're talking about, it's a legacy that leads to our future and reflects the past. And I think that's real important for us to remember that. And like you said before, Marsha's done a great service there in preserving a lot of that. Change is always hard. And, it takes a lot of adjustment. And in my opinion, a little compromise. And that's something that is hard to accomplish sometimes, where you have different factions, looking at our special interests.
Thank you, Lonnie. Megan and Harlan, do you have anything you want to add about what kinds of changes to the landscape you've seen over the years?
Like I said, I went on a trip with my wife, and I've seen a lot of vegetations come back after a fire goes through. And one year, my wife's reservation needed to be reseeded, so I took my family, which I made my crew for 2 years, and we bought all the plants, all the natural plants that needed to go up there. BLM provided it, for us to replant it. So we did. We replanted. We spent 2 summers, 2 winters up there replanting it, because, well, when they drive their sheep and their cows through our reservation, they tend to eat everything up as they move. And so BLM went on there and told us what damage they did. They told us they'd provide us the seed to put it back in, and we did. And it took us 2 years. My grandkids and I did all that project, and it come back for the wildlife, because I do a lot of deer hunting on my wife's reservation and my reservation down in Shivwoods. And Shivwoods burned twice, one by lightning and one by human. And they done a lot of reseeding up there, and the wildlife's thriving. They've never had bighorn sheep in there before down in Shivwoods. So they got a lot of that on their reservation now, bighorn sheep. And I think sad thing I see on my reservation down there is the cedar trees, because we don't have it all burned up, except for some of the canyons still has cedar trees. But like I said, reason why we put that in was the national national monument. It was overgrazed. Like the what's his name said, roads were made that not supposed to be there. Some places I went back in, and the roads that were made are all they went and put it back to bed. No roads in there no more. Just the ones that they travel on are all there. And it's just not, we don't mean to keep ranchers or anybody out. It's for everybody. We want the vegetation to come back so the cows can go back on, and then it all depends on Mother Nature too, if we get the rain or the snow or not when you reseed it. But lucky thing on my wife's reservation, it snowed all winter long and rained all summer long, so everything came back, for the wildlife and the sheep and the cows that graze on there. And it's just, I guess it's just how you manage it,
Sure.
And then it all depends on the rain and the weather to bring all that back, which we don't have now. And it's just, we pray and pray and pray, that we get moisture. And a lot of this stuff is not just meant for, I guess they call us conservationists, environmentalists, tree huggers, not just for us, for everybody. That's why we do it, our next generation. So, what we do benefits everybody. Like my uncle said, what medicine he uses for his ceremony down there in Kanab, coming back, which they never had before. It's coming back. Same way with the Grand Canyon. I went down there 6 years ago with Arizona State. And though Arizona State has rehabbed a lot of that canyon down through there. They removed all the donkeys. They put them on the Indian reservation down there, have a supai, they have a fence. And they brought all the vegetation that grew down there, the yucca plants, everything. And they redid all the beaches down there with the dam eroded from the releasing the water, the Colorado River. And those people down there just improved that Grand Canyon down there. And it was beautiful down there when I went down there with my son. And, we keep doing this, we can always make it better. Like we always say, we're here as a team on this world, our kids, our grandkids, you, anybody that donates, we do wonders. So that's all I say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and definitely seems like there are both positive and more negative impacts through use and careful management. Megan, did you want to add anything on that topic?
Yeah, I think there has been changes. I noticed it. So as the film mentioned, I worked as a backcountry ranger, so I pay attention more to recreation sites, and I mean, we're seeing a huge increase in people recreating on public lands. And I don't think that's going to become less. I think it's going to become more. And I think, to me, that speaks to the significance and importance of protecting more land, not less, and working to conserve what we have and to preserve it, and to also educate people about leave no trace and how to tread lightly on these spaces that we're coming into. And, I think the year 2020 has been really difficult, like the election, the pandemic. But what it has highlighted is the importance of public lands as a safe space to build connections that we couldn't build during the pandemic. We couldn't meet up with friends, and we haven't been able to safely. And so, early on in the pandemic, when we still didn't know very much about the virus, even playgrounds were shut down. And so the monument became a really important place for me to go with my kids and my husband. And it gave us that space to breathe and do it in a socially distant way with friends and family that we wanted to spend time with. And we weren't the only ones. I saw so many people and have seen so many people out on the monument, and that increase in public land use during this pandemic, because we've had to return to these basics of life. And I think it's highlighted that we all need this restoration. And I think deep down, we know that restoration comes from nature.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And I think that's a nice way to sort of transition. I know we've had many more questions than we'll be able to answer tonight. But I would like to sort of go around one last time to pose to all of you that there are many issues. There's climate change, monument boundaries. There's plenty to debate with regards to Grand Staircase and with regards to public lands. But I want to ask, what is important to keep in mind for a path forward together in terms of caring about and connecting with public land? And perhaps what can you offer as a local to the Grand Staircase area that an outsider might not realize about this region, about these communities, or about this land? So since I would like all of you to have a chance to speak, we'll try to keep it brief for everyone. But does anybody have thoughts that they'd like to start this round off? Lonnie,
Well,
it looks like you unmuted.
Go for it, Lonnie.
Did I unmute? Okay. Well, I think those of us that live on the land have a different, kind of a different perspective of it. I think, like I said before, I think compromise is important, but I think the land should always come first. And sometimes we forget, you know, sometimes we don't put the land first, we put our interests first. We put the land first and then our interests and then compromise. I think that's the way to manage the land. You know, I think it's such a special place on the earth and it needs to be taken care of. But I still feel like we can use it as well as protect it. And I think another element in it is the local people here. I think they add a flavor to it, maybe that needs to be recognized a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Henry, would you like to go next since you were also an unmuter?
Yeah, well, I can't really offer anything as a local, but you know, I just think I've had such really such an incredible and enriching and enlightening experience getting to know Bonnie and Harlan and Megan and Marsha, and just the experience of making this film and getting to know those people who I would not have gotten to know otherwise has been really exciting and also just a really kind of big source of hope for me that that I can, you know, form such deep and meaningful connections with people who I wouldn't have thought I had so much in common with previously. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just, as cliche as it sounds, just really deeply listening to each other can be a real fountain of kind of hope and optimism.
Yeah, deeply listening. I agree. Marsha?
Yeah, so it's a big question, Neak, but you know, as kind of a local, I want to say that people like Lonnie have been great neighbors and have helped me understand that perspective. A lot of the people I've interviewed are similar to Lonnie. And so, you know, moving here from someplace else and having a different idea about wilderness and land, you know, my perspective changed over time. Still a love for land, for this beautiful place. And I just wanted to say thank you to Megan and Lonnie for sharing such a beautiful story and moments, memories of Bodie. He was also my neighbor and someone I spoke to and saw often. And so I just think it was a really magical thing that Henry did to bring that story in. It very much surprised me. And to Harlan, who trusted us and helped us understand from his special perspective, you know, what's really important on the land for he and his family. So these are all really great little bits and pieces. The sharing, Megan and Lonnie shared their hearts. And Harlan, you know, shared his spirituality as well as his heart. And in this project, it was an amazing thing and hard to believe that it could ever be replicated. So Henry, kudos again. And I just really want to thank everyone on this panel.
Thank you, Marsha. Harlan, what words would you have for our path forward? I'm also jealous of your dog.
Yeah, I got my little girl bothering me. Chloe. But anyway, you know, like Megan said, you know, with this COVID thing going on, you know, I've seen a lot of people take interest in our national parks and our national monument, even just the landscape, you know, around outside of town, you know, take notice in it. You see them hiking out there with their kids, looking at Indian writings on the walls, you know, on the cliffs. We got a lot of it here at the Gap. And Sunday, my wife and I rode out to Garrison, and we'd never been out there. And we just, you know, we was bored being locked up in the house, so we took a ride. And while we was riding out there, we seen a lot of wild horses out in the boonies out there, and which you never see, you know, around here, but out there in the desert, you see these wild horses and antelopes and deers, you know, that you don't see out there out on the desert. But, you know, like Megan said, you know, with this pandemic going on, we just opened our eyes that we have something beautiful to look at. Mm-hmm. Instead of going to the movie and hanging out at the mall, you know, we just opened our eyes now because of this pandemic that, you know, we got a beautiful Mother Earth that we can go visit and go see. And now I know where Lehman's Cave is, so I'm going to take my grandkids up there for Easter. So, but yeah. you know, if this is what it takes, this, you know, pandemic, you know, more power to, you know, to the pandemic, you know, because it really opens your eyes what's around your neighbor, you know, in your neighborhood, your national park. And, you know, we just realized, you know, we opened our eyes. We have such a beautiful place to live and go visit. And, you know, like I've always said, you know, I do it for my grandkids and my great grandkids. And so it's all hanging there, wear our mask and be safe.
Yeah, definitely makes us really appreciate the lands that we have out here. Megan?
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are that we really can't emphasize the importance of our conversations with each other and building those connections and finding that common ground. It's going to be the path forward, and I think it's the only path forward that we have. And I'm really hopeful about this. Sometimes I'm not. But I do try to be hopeful about this. Brian Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy, I was listening to a podcast with him, and he says you either have to be hopeful or you're part of the problem. And I don't want to be part of the problem. And I don't see many of us who do want to be part of the problem. I am concerned too, I have to say. I don't think we can put our public lands in the limbo of being managed in a flip-flop fashion, depending on what political party has power. And I really don't believe that conservation should be a partisan issue. I think, you know, our public lands are our greatest legacy that we can leave behind to the generations that come after us. And we should protect that legacy because we're not separate from the natural world. We're really intimately linked to it. And when we conserve and protect it, we're conserving and protecting ourselves. And so I think those are just kind of my final thoughts of what we can do as individuals, is to remain hopeful and to be a voice and share your stories and share what public lands mean to you.
Great, thank you. So I would love to extend a very heartfelt thank you to our panelists this evening. We're so grateful that you were able to join us. And thank you to our audience for participating. Don't hesitate to reach out if you had any trouble watching the film or if you have further questions. So take care, everybody. Stay safe, be well, and keep loving our public lands.